فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ, that you should seek the refuge of Allah as a Muslim, as a believer. Now, this question is very, very important, and we are finding ourselves in a time where more than ever before this question has become prominent. Who created the creator of this world, if there is even one? And if there's a creator, why can't we see him? And if that entity created the universe, how did he create the universe? So there are so many questions that are arising out of modern atheism. One of the Nobel Prize winners said something very beautiful, addressing current so-called philosophers, so-called scientists, so-called deep thinkers. He says, he was a father of quantum physics, quantum mechanisms, which is one of the most difficult fields of physics. And he says, the first gulp from the glass of science will turn you into an atheist. So yes, when you start reading a few pages of science, you begin to feel so full of yourself. So he says, at that first drink, the first drink of that water of science, you become an atheist. Then he says, but at the bottom of that glass, God is waiting for you. When you truly comprehend sciences, this is the saying of the father of modern quantum physics. Then Einstein says, the more I read about science, the more I believe in God. So the core belief here is that intellects of every era have not rejected the concept of God. Rather, they have believed in that concept. The truth of the issue is that humility is not a gift that comes to everyone. That saying that I have no knowledge is not a gift that comes to everybody, except especially to those who are learned in their field. And as the Holy Prophet prophesied, that Satan in the latter days would come and ask people, who created your God? So today we will answer that question, inshallah. And the topic of the tafsir that we are going to do today is the existence of Allah, the existence of God, which we will prove as the verse I recited from the Holy Quran, which says, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, that we would prove our existence, our being, our entity, fil afaq, in the universe, wafi anfusihim, and in their own beings, hatta yatabayyana lahum annahu al-haq. Yatabayyana means it will scream out to them, their own beings, and the universe will scream to them that this is the truth. There is a creator behind this. So let us answer the first question, why we cannot see God. The Holy Quran says, لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدركه الأبصار وهو اللطيف الخبير. You cannot see him with your physical eyes because he is latif. He is beautiful in his attributes and manifestation. And because of that, you cannot see him with your eyes. And this is scientifically proven. Logic proves it, and so does the Holy Quran. So the first question we are addressing today is, why can we not see God? The first thing that we will discuss today is the scientific limitations of the human vision, the presence of the unseen sciences and the unseen natures of the world, scientific analogies that prove unseen forces, and Quranic evidence. So, the first thing is that human vision, the human eye that sees, it does not interact with visible light, the human eye, until it is between 400 and 700 nanometers, meaning a specific range. After that, the human eye is not able to see. And let me give you a few examples of that. The ultraviolet radiation, rays and radiation, which is used to sterilize different things for tanning and for other items, elements, it is not seen by the human eye. In the same way, infrared lights, when you press a button on your remote, it clicks to your TV, but that ray, that communication between your remote and your TV is not seen because it uses light receptors which are below or more than what the human eye can see. The same is the X-rays, the gamma rays, and so much. Just look at the antennas that we have at home. They are receiving signals, but those signals cannot be seen by our eye because they are above or below the 400 to 700 nanometers that our eyes can take. Scientists even say that the human eye sees less than 1% of reality of this universe. That is what scientists say. So the question itself is flawed. We would get to a point in this tafsir where we would mention that all of the most powerful forces of this universe are unseen. We would get to that. How science proves that every powerful force of nature is unseen. But before getting to that, let's also understand that even weak forces, as the scientists say, that less than 1% of what we can see is what we see is actually in reality existing, because there are 99% of things happening in this world of nature which is unseen to mankind. Microwaves, radio waves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays, Bluetooth, which we all use to connect, they are also unseen. So the question itself is flawed. If there was a creator, he should be seen. Then, a very common concept of blind spots. Even with this physical vision that we have, there are blind spots, and the eye adjusts with the mind to make it as if we are seeing that spot. Those spots exist when driving, when going for hiking. All those blind spots exist, and people fall into accidents because of that blind spot. So the question still is flawed, that we cannot have a creator because we cannot see him. Aside the human eyes, the animals, like for example the bees, they use ultraviolet light patterns on flowers that human beings cannot see. When they're taking out the nectar and honey, they draw different lines which tell other bees that this has been, the nectar of this fruit, of this plant has been taken. But that line is not seen to man as well. Snakes use infrared heat to see their prey as well. So the meaning is, the core line here is different creatures perceive different versions of reality. A different version of reality is given to everyone, to every creation that exists in this universe. Another very, very important thing to consider is Einstein's theory of relativity, where he says the human beings perceive 3 dimensions: the length, the width, and the height. There are creations that perceive only 2 dimensions. So he gives the example that if there is a creation that lives on this paper, for it, there's no height because it cannot go above that, it cannot go beyond that. So the length is taken away, so it exists in only 2 dimensions. So 2 dimensions of the universe are known to that creature. 3 dimensions are known to mankind: the length, the width, and the height. And then he proposes that there is 4 dimensions as well. And the 4th dimension is time. So he says it is a reality that determines mankind's actions just as the other 3 dimensions do, but we cannot see time as well. So he proposed that the 4 dimensions are actually the true realities of man instead of the 3 dimensions. Then we have the viruses, the microbes, which were unseen by science until discovered recently. The germs, people had no idea about them, how diseases are spreading. So the fact still remains that not every known thing in this universe can be seen by the human eye. This is one of the most flawed arguments, that we cannot see God because he does not exist because we cannot see him. And I have given you a few examples of that. Then we have emotions and thoughts. Emotions, be it love, fear, happiness, hatred, they are all emotions that exist. They are true in their own being and presence, but they are also unseen. Wisdom, knowledge, they are all unseen, but no one rejects their presence because their presence is felt by how they are practiced, how they are applied. So just briefly summarizing this, I would give you a Quranic verse that proves this as well. I gave the examples of the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the X-ray rays, gamma rays, radio waves, TV signals, air, oxygen, wind, and all of that, which are unseen realities of life. Now, the Holy Quran gives us one example of this. He says, let's take this example from a person who looks directly at the sun when the sun is scorching. You look at the sun, and within a few seconds, nature is made in such a way that it pulls you away, it closes your eyes from seeing the scorchy sun, because the eye is not able to, or has not been built in a way to be able to see the sunlight. So the Holy Quran gives us the example of Surah Musa in Surah Al-Araf, where he makes that request, "Oh Allah, let me see you." And Allah says, "Lan tarani," you cannot see me, because the reality of the world is that the human eye is limited by its nature. I gave you the example of the sun. The sun, one of the least powerful powers of this world, of this universe, the sight of man cannot hold that one. So Allah says, "Lan tarani," you do not have that capacity to hold my sight. And he refuses. So Allah says, فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ, when Allah manifested himself on the mountain, even that could not be seen. That is why people go blind when they come out of prison, when they see light for the first time in many years, they go blind. In the same way, when the sun hits on icebergs into the eyes of man, they go blind, because the human eye cannot perceive every reality of the world. And this is an example. Allah told Musa that you cannot see me. He resisted. Allah says, "Let me give you a glimpse of my existence." فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ, and Allah made his presence known to Musa by that mountain, and he could not understand what happened to him, and he fell off. So this is how flawed that question is in its own self, that why can we not see him if he exists? The second thing that we need to discuss, which is very important, very, very important, is that all powerful forces, or the most powerful forces of this universe, are the unseen forces. We call God as the most powerful force of this world, of this universe. Then comes the question, why can we not see him? The question goes back to those who say why we cannot see him is, why can we not see powerful forces of this universe? I'll give you the examples and show you how powerful they are. Gravity, dark matter, dark energy, black holes. I'll just give you 4 or 5 examples to show you how strong these forces are and why they cannot be seen. Let's take gravity for example. So just look at the moon. As big as the moon is, the thing that stops the moon from flying away into the universe is gravity. But also, it's a force that cannot be seen. The moon is 384,000 kilometers away from mankind, and despite that distance, gravity is so powerful that it has been able to hold the moon in place. It has been able to hold all other planets in place. And it is a force that cannot be seen. Now, if for a second gravity was turned off, let's say it was an automated machine that we can turn off, immediately gravity is turned off, everything in this world would be destroyed. The seas would start floating. Just take a bucket of water, how heavy it is, and compare that to the amount of water in the oceans which is being held in place by gravity. How powerful that force is. Just to hold one bucket of water, 550 liters, is not possible. A poly tank of 1,000 liters cannot be held by human powers. And we are talking about 70% of this world being held together, being stitched together by gravity. Then let's take another very great force in the world, which is dark matter. Dark matter is actually the kind of invisible glue that is holding the galaxies together. And this makes about 27% of the universe, the black or the dark matter. It holds 27% of the universe. And as we go up in the next point, I would show you how enormous and how unprecedentedly expanding this universe is in its own realms. It is so great and so magnificent that human cannot even perceive how great and how huge this universe is. We would explain that. And 27% of this universe is dark matter. Now, what is dark matter? You see, when a player kicks the ball to the goalkeeper, it travels at 60 kilometers per hour, 70 kilometers per hour. When the ball is kicked by the player to the goalkeeper, the ball travels at 60 kilometers, 70 kilometers, 80 kilometers max to the goalkeeper. And when the goalkeeper holds that ball, he feels the momentum and his hand tries to get hold of that ball, which is traveling at just 60, 70 kilometers per hour. That is a single ball, few inches wide. And here we are talking about dark matter, which is controlling 27% of the universe, which is the glue, the invisible glue, holding billions of galaxies. So energy, which the goalkeeper uses to get hold of the ball, requires so much of that. So imagine how much energy is required to hold galaxies in place. How much force is used to hold this universe in place, which is being done by dark matter. Then we have dark energy as well. Now, you see, we have the dark energy. We explained dark matter. Now I'll explain dark energy. The world, this universe is fast expanding, as the scientists realized when Hubble saw in his telescope that the rays of the light visions are moving from red to blue, that this universe is fast expanding. So the case is just like a person blowing air into a balloon. When you are blowing into a balloon, as small as the balloon is, look at the energy you use to expand that balloon. Dark energy, which is 68% of this universe, is propelled in a way to expand this entire universe. I give you the example, compare that to just a balloon that we inflate, or a car tire. As small as it is, how much energy is required? A car tire, you can even fill it with a bicycle pump because it requires more energy. And here we are talking about energy that transcends physical realms, physical understanding. Then when I continue saying this universe, let's understand how great this universe is. So this, our solar system, is in a Milky Way. And to cross this Milky Way, we need 100,000 years, light years. So with the speed of light, if we are to travel out of our Milky Way, out of our, let's say our country, if we call the world a region and our Milky Way our country, if we are to cross our country, we require 100,000 light years. So for comparison, it is just like if the entire African planet, African continent, was put in perspective with our Milky Way, so our region versus our country. So the scientists say that our solar system would be as much space a coin would take to fill Africa. So as big as Africa is, that is our Milky Way, and our solar system is just like a coin in Africa. This is how great just our Milky Way is, our country. Then the Milky Way is just one galaxy, and there are 200 billion galaxies in the world. You know how great a billion is? If someone should start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, to reach a billion, he requires 35 years to reach just a billion. And here we are talking about 200 billion galaxies. So humans in their own life cannot even count up to 200 billion. And that is the amount of galaxies in this universe. And every galaxy has billions of stars. Another example of how tiny our Earth is. So they say, the scientists have projected it that, let's say we have a pebble, a stone, a small stone. Is that if you put that stone on one side and put the entire planet Earth on the other side, that difference is still less than the difference between our Earth and the universe. So the universe is even bigger than if we put a stone, a single stone on one side and the entire world on the other side. That difference, they say that difference is less than the difference between how small our Earth is and how big our universe is. Then they are saying, the scientists say that there are billions of galaxies. How many galaxies in this world? A galaxy means billions of stars. They say, the scientists say that if you go to all the beaches in the world, you collect all the sand grains, the grains of sand on all beaches of the world. You see how tiny those grains are? So the scientists say that go around collecting all the grains of sand on the beaches of the world, and those grains of sand in the entire world are less than the number of galaxies in this universe. That's what the Holy Quran says, "Sanurihim ayatina fil afaqi wa fi anfusihim." That this universe will itself testify that you put all the sand grains of the beaches of the world, all the beaches, you collect all the sand on one side, count the grains. Those grains are less than the galaxies in this universe. That is what the Holy Quran, as I just mentioned, points up to. That when they make such discoveries is when حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ, that it will scream to them. يَتَبَيَّنَ means it will scream out to them that أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ, this is the truth. Then we have the black holes. The black holes in this universe, they are so strong that till today, human beings have not been able to picture what a black hole looks like. Because for us to understand how a black hole looks like, it needs light to reflect off. And you see, when a camera is taking a picture, it captures, it throws light rays, and then uses that to capture back. But here is the case that black holes are so strong that nothing escapes black holes. So that is why there is no picture that can be depicted. Lately, last 2-3 years, there have been attempts to do so, but it is impossible because when you throw light at it, when light rays get to the black hole, they are absorbed inside. They don't reflect off it. One very simple example of this is, to make you understand, is like the color black. A very, very dark color black. Sometimes when you try to even picture it with a camera, you don't understand what it looks like. That's a very, 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 very minute example I can give of how a black hole operates. So the very important question that we have addressed here is that all the forces governing this world, this universe, are unseen. We have established this point so far. That for any force to be from the governing forces of this universe, it has to be unseen. Gravity, black matter, dark energy, black hole, you name it. Any energy, any force that is governing this world through its principles is unseen in its existence. Now, having established the fact that a creator, if there is any, it is not incumbent upon him that he is shown to us, because our eyes are restricted in their sight. And the second thing is, if there is a creator, he should be the most powerful force. And if all the forces that fall from the 2nd grade to the lesser 10th, 15th grade, they are unseen. How can that creator be seen? Then comes the second question, who created God? A very important question. We are discussing the existence of God. So this question is very important, and that's what the Holy Quran mentions. As the Holy Quran said, and I recited in the earlier part where he says, Am khuliqu min ghayri shay'in, were they created out of nothing? Am humul khaliqun, or they are their own creators? Am khalaqu samawati wal ard bal la yuqinun, but they are not aware of how they were created. So that is the question that comes, who created God? You see, to understand this question, there are two ways to go about it. The first is infinite regress. For example, this pen. This pen was created in a factory by a man. That factory was created by a human being. That human being was created by his parents. That parents were created by their parents. So that regress, you trace back where it goes. Now here is a case that scientists have established that this universe was created. This is a very important point. Scientists have agreed now that this universe has not been as it is. It has been created after the Big Bang. So who created this universe? An external force. Because they say energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So for that, if you're talking about energy, that has to be created by something. So that infinite regress, you continue and you don't get to an end. The reason is you are looking at it from a very wrong point, very wrong perspective. Let me give you an example. See, if I ask you a question that the baker baked the cake, so who baked the baker? It's a wrong question. The cake in its attributes requires to be baked, but man does not require to be baked. So you are comparing two things that don't make sense. Another question. If this painting was painted by a painter, who painted the painter? Again, a wrong question. The reason why this question is wrong is that for the attributes of a painting, it requires to be painted. But of the attributes of human beings, we don't require to be painted. A meal requires a chef, but a chef does not require a chef. So when we say that who created God, we are viewing this question from a very wrong point of view, because those who are bound by time, by space, they require to be born. Just like the cake needs to be baked, but the baker does not need to be baked. So we are comparing two things, which is very important to understand this point. Let's look at this. In a computer game, the programmer needs to program the game, but those rules that regulate those games, they are not binding on the programmer as well. So in the game, if you press X, it will hit someone. That does not mean the one who created that game should also, if someone pressed X, he would hit someone. So this is the difference between creation and creator. For creation, there are rules which are set by time. So the creator of anything, the rules of his creation are not binding on the creator. Very important thing to understand. Because God, by his own definition, is someone who has always existed. I gave you the example of, okay, another example, let me give you. The one who composed music. The composer of a music requires someone to compose it, but the composer does not require anyone to compose him. This is a fallacy which many atheists use today. The who created God? If man is created, so God should be created. No. A cake needs to be baked, but the baker of the cake does not need to be baked. Meals require chef, but chefs don't require chefs. So the rules which are binding on the creation of someone. I gave you the example of a gamer. A programmer has made his game, that when you press X, he would hit someone. But the rules of that game, in other words, of our universe, are not binding on the creator of the game. In the same way, are not binding on the creator of this universe. The garden, another example, the garden requires a gardener, but the gardener does not require a gardener. So we are comparing two things which do not make sense. For a garden to exist, it requires someone to garden it. But those laws that are abiding on the garden do not abide on the gardener. So this is a very important point that we need to understand, that God cannot be created because he is outside time. Things which are inside time, as Einstein proposed in his theory of relativity, that there are 4 dimensions, which is time. Time is another dimension. And all things which are binded or chained by time required to be created, just like this universe. When Hubble sent his telescope, that's what they realized, that this universe is a creation. So things in this creation need to be created, but things which are not binding by time do not need to be created. Then, one other thing that is very important, and Hazrat Muslim Maud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu has mentioned part of this, which is a very important book, The Existence of God. Huzur has written a book on that as well, which everyone should try and read. Huzur makes a very beautiful point. He says that why is it that people who were unconnected in history, let's take before Columbus discovered North America, before North America became a known territory to the people of Australia, the people living in the middle of the oceans in Indonesia, the oldest known human civilization, and even there are some people till this date which are unconnected to this other part of the world, like the people living in the Amazon rainforest. So Huzur makes a point that why is it the case that all these people, I will give the details of that as well as we go on, they have always believed in a supernatural being or a supernatural creator without being related to one another in any way, shape or form. So let's take a few examples of this. The Amazon tribes, those who live in the forests of Amazon in South America, for thousands of years isolated. It was recently in 2012 when different people from different countries discovered their existence even. So these people have lived there for thousands and thousands of years, unknown to the world, unrelated to the world. They have the concept of a supreme being. The Yanomami tribe of Brazil and Venezuela, they have believed in the Omama, that there is a supreme being somewhere in the skies that should be worshipped. Then in Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, another unknown tribe to the world have believed in the Tupi Guarani. Again, the same concept, that Tupa means, in their language, the one on the skies. So he should be worshipped. So Huzur asks this question, I will give more examples of that, that how come people who were not related, unconnected in every way, form and shape from the others had this belief? It means that is what the verse of the Holy Quran I recited, which says that قالت رسلهم أفي الله شك فاطر السماوات والأرض. How would you doubt the one who created you? Because natural instinct looks for the reason of his existence in this world. Then let's go to the Australians. So we have discussed South America, and completely opposite to them, Australia, thousands and thousands of kilometers away from them. The Aborigines of Australia have lived according to history, and because of carbon dating that we have now, scientists can tell how long, when any item has been left, it gathers different forms of matter, death. So scientists have found through carbon dating, they can be very precisely tell how long this thing has been in existence for. So Aborigines of Australia have lived for 6,000 plus years. And they have also had the concept of Dreamtime God, someone who appears to you in your dreams, a creator who comes to you in your dreams. Again, the same concept of one God. The Yungu tribe believe in the creator who created all living things. Then they have a different tribe among the Aborigines, the Ararinate tribe, which also talk about the eternal sky god. So this concept has always existed. Now coming to the Indus Valley civilization, which is known to be the oldest civilization in this world. That is current time, the Pakistan and India side of the world. It is called the Indus Valley civilization, which is more than 8,000 years old. So recently, in the last 100, 200 years, there have been different discoveries from there of different paintings, of different stones. And the depictions of those stones have always been people raising their hands to one creator above them. So the bottom line of this entire thing, which Huzur mentioned in his book, is the fact that people unconnected in every way, people of the Indus Valley were nowhere related to the people of Australia. The people of Australia were not connected to the people of North and South America. But one thing which has remained unified among all these people after thousands of years is the fact that they all believe in one creator somewhere in the skies. Then you take the example of the ancient Egypt. Same concept, which were 3,000 years before Christ, so 5,000 years from now. They also believed in the Amun-Ra. The Amun-Ra was, the understanding of Amun-Ra is a creation above human comprehension. That's how they understood that one. Then ancient Chinese, they believed in a Shangdi, which means the supreme God. Then the Native Americans, they believed in the Wakantaka, which means the great spirit, referring to that one creator in the skies. And all Native American tribes of North America, which we currently know as the USA, have always believed in the existence of one spiritual being in the skies. So far in our discussion, we have touched on why God cannot be seen from a scientific point of view, why God does not need to be created, and the third thing is that inherently man is prone and man has been told about one creator somewhere unknown to the world. So these are the 3 points that we have touched on. Again, there are so many examples. The Sumerians, the second oldest civilizations of the world, Mesopotamia, the people of Mesopotamia, current day Iraq. So the thing is, this concept has existed since time was known in this world. Now, one other thing which I will now discuss is the fact I'm still to scientifically prove to you the existence of God. I'm currently just answering different allegations. And yes, the second point Huzur makes, he points to a fact to cause and effect. This is a very, very beautiful point which Huzur mentions in his book. Huzur gives the example of one Bedouin, one illiterate, who was asked by a philosopher. The philosopher asked him that how do you know God exists? That apparently less knowledgeable person says, and I'm quoting what Huzur wrote. Huzur wrote, وَالْبَعْرَةُ تَدُلُّ عَلَى الْبَعِيرِ وَأَثَارُ الْأَقْدَامِ عَلَى سَفِيرِ وَالسَّمَاءُ ذَاتُ الْبُرُوجِ وَالْأَرْضُ ذَاتُ الْفِجَاجِ كَيْفَ لَا تَدُلُّ عَلَى اللَّطِيفِ الْخَبِيرِ. That is, the remains of a camel show the presence of a camel. The footprints of a person show the existence of that person. So how will the skies and the heavens and the earth not show the existence of a God? Now, let's break down this principle of cause and effect. If there is fire, that is the effect. Fire is the effect, and the cause is heat, fuel, oxygen. If there are footprints in the sand, that means the cause was someone walked there. If there is a building, the effect is a building and the cause is an architect. The cause is a mason. The cause is cement. The cause is blocks. So this theory of cause and effect have always been one of the greatest signs of God. Now, this universe is the footprint of the Creator. How is it? You see, just as the footprint in the sand indicate to a traveler, in the same way, this fine-tuned universe suggests an intelligent designer. Very simple to understand. I'm just going through some few things which I would then also highlight as well. The second thing is, I gave you one example that the universe is the footprint of the Creator. How precisely the universe has been calibrated to prove and allow life in this world, the laws of physics, gravity, electromagnetic rays, thermodynamic regulations of the world, and how they are perfectly balanced. That is number one. The second thing is the DNA. The DNA is just like the book of life, the rules of life, which are in every being. I will give the details of that. The human mind and the consciousness of a person, another cause, another effect. So the thing is that before Jamaat, which alhamdulillah provides the best material against atheism, there have been different analogies which Huzur Khalifat Masih Rabi rahimahullah have mentioned in his book Revelation, Rationality, Knowledge and Truth, another very, very beautiful commentary of the Holy Quran, which is a scientific commentary of the Holy Quran. That's how I should put it. Huzur quotes William Paley of 1802, where he gives the example of the watch. He says that if you walk in the desert and you see a watch, a wristwatch, that wristwatch in the middle of the desert still proves that there was someone who walked here. It proves there was someone who created that watch, who made that watch, who manufactured that watch. Then Fred Hoyle, an astrophysicist, very great one of them, one of the greatest astrophysicists, Fred Hoyle, he gives the example of an aeroplane and a junkyard. He says that to say this universe just came out of nowhere without an intelligent designer is like saying a tornado passed on top of a junkyard, and as a result of that tornado passing on top of a junkyard, an aeroplane came into existence. Common sense does not accept the fact. Then on top of that, one atheist wrote a book, and in that book he wrote a subject naming it the ultimate Boeing 747, trying to refute this very sane point of view that you believe there is no creator, fine, but that's just like saying that a tornado passed on top of a junkyard that had nails and iron and metals, and all of a sudden it became a flying jet, impossible as it is. If you see a book, it means there was an author of that book. So this cause and effect argument, which Huzur mentions in his book, Hazrat Khalifat Masih Al-Thani, the third Khalifa, and Hazrat Khalifat Masih Rabi rahimahullah explains that further, which I have done to some extent as well, mentions that the cause and effect. So I gave you two examples of Fred Hoyle, who talked about the aeroplane, and I gave you the example of the watchmaker. Now let me just give you a little more details of this. If there is no creator of this universe, agreed. You see, the largest commercial flying jet today in the world is the Airbus A380. It can take about 800, 900 people max. So there's an aircraft that can fly about 900 kilometers per hour, carrying 900 people and weighing 560,000 kilograms. That is the greatest commercial flight. That's on one side. Now, juxtapose that to another Boeing. But this Boeing, this aircraft, is carrying 8 billion people. A simple analogy. An aircraft that can travel at 800 kilometers per hour carrying 800 people. Another aircraft also going through its universe, flying in this universe, carrying 7 billion people. On top of that, it is rotating on its own axis. On top of that, it is racing towards the planet Venus as well. So if an aircraft 700 kilometers per hour carrying 800 people requires an intelligent designer, how about that aircraft which is carrying 8 billion people orbiting around the world, at the same time rotating around its own axis and racing towards Venus? That is how, this is just to explain the aeroplane and junkyard by Fred Hoyle, who was an astrophysicist. He proposed this, that to say that this universe does not have a creator is just like saying a junkyard and it's another person on top of that junkyard, and those nails and everything come together to form the Boeing 747. That was in his time. Now we have the Airbus A380. So it's the same thing, that the world is moving at 200 kilometers towards the Vega star. It is orbiting the sun at 30 meters per second. At the same time, it is rotating itself at 4 kilometers per second. So how can this aeroplane, which is the Earth, do so without an intelligent designer? Then comes the question, who is piloting that universe, that star, that Earth? The Holy Quran says, لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. That the constant speed of that Earth, the constant speed of star Venus, the constant speed of Jupiter, the constant speed of all other stars and planets in this world is having a pilot, just like your aircraft requires a pilot to keep it at a constant speed. So does the pilot of this universe, the pilot of the Earth, which is an aircraft bigger than your aircraft, needs a pilot. So the Holy Quran says, لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار كل في فلك يسبحون. I, the creator of this universe, have intelligently programmed my aircrafts to follow one another at a speed I have destined and decreed for them. And none of them goes outside the domains that I have put for them. Then again expanding, I will expand a little more on the verse which I recited earlier on, which is very, very important in regards to atheism. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق من ربهم, was the discovery of the DNA. The DNA, in simple words, is like the manual for life. So every living thing in this universe, let's take the example of the human body, it has the DNA in every cell of the human body. Now, so it is just like a recipe of a cookbook. So when you're going to cook, you open your recipe book. Okay, I'm going to cook this dish today. You open your recipe book. Okay, these are the items, ingredients needed for me to cook this food. This is a DNA for human beings. So when you have an injury, a cut, the DNA knows how to respond. The different forms, shapes of things, of elements that are required to heal you from that injury. So the DNA, as I gave you, is a kind of instruction, a book manual in every cell of the human body. In one human cell, a cell which is not seen by the human eye, there are 3 billion letter codes of this DNA. 3 billion of them in each cell. And if you take out any one of them, you destroy that. And they say, the scientists have mentioned now, that if they are to type out, this is very important, if they are to type out the DNA information in each cell, that would be more than all the books of this universe combined that were ever written. This is the amount of information in the human, in the cell. Take another example. Look at the seed. How small the seed is. Let's say of a mango tree. The seed is this big. You plant it in this soil, and the DNA, the structure that God has put in place, is able to make that one seed grow billion times bigger than its own seed. That is how this has been programmed. 1 gram of DNA, 1 gram of information that is in our body, 1 gram of that can be stored and would be stored on 215 million gigabytes of data. To just store what is in 1 gram of DNA, which is greater than the servers of YouTube, Google, and Facebook combined. So the most intelligent designers of this social media platforms combined on one side and 1 gram of DNA on the other side, and they would require more space to store that information, which can be stored on just 1 gram of DNA. That is how efficiently it has been done and programmed. Then on top of that, this DNA structure has been made in such a way that it can self-repair and self-copy itself. So when cells divide, DNAs copy themselves at over 3 billion times per second. For just clarity, when we are talking about nature, we are thinking billion so many times. I mentioned in the beginning that if someone should sit down to count 1 to a billion, 1, 2, 3, 4, it would take him more than 25 years just to count 1 billion. And here is this case that this hard drive called the DNA is transferring itself to another hard drive at the speed of 3 billion times per second, greater than any known human discoveries and innovations. On top of that, it has the system of self-correction. Whenever there's an error in its DNA structure, the system is programmed in a way that it can correct itself. So then comes those few questions, as I mentioned. The DNA is the manual book of this life. So if every book needs a writer, who wrote the book of human life? If computers need engineers to store their data, which engineer is required to store the data which the greatest companies of this world cannot store together? 215 million gigabytes. That is what we talked about in the beginning, cause and effect. There is a cause, and that cause is due to an effect. If machines are repaired today by engineers, that is the effect of a cause. In the same way, there should be, science should prove the existence of a cause to that effect. So for the DNA of the human, the DNA is such a great discovery of man that those who discovered the DNA were given the Nobel Prize. That's how great this is, a discovery, not even an invention, a discovery. So the scientists say that this DNA structure of man, if someone is to say it came out of nowhere, no one created this DNA structure, it is like saying that an untrained monkey sat down to write 1,000 pages of extreme intelligent design. That is how equivalent you would be saying, which is impossible. Or to say a computer wrote its own code without a programmer. Or to say a tornado, a cyclone built an aircraft. These are impossible items. So if these little items, a 500-page book requires an author, then why would the book of this universe not require an author? This is a question. And this is what the Holy Quran reminds us. أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Were they created out of nowhere? No. This is how they say by chance. So Allah addresses this question. Do they think they were created out of chance? أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Or they created their own selves. Again, an impossible item. Now, one very, very, very important thing which we need to understand when we are talking about the existence of God. We don't prove the existence of God. God is the most undisputed, proven entity of this universe. When we are talking about the existence of God, one thing which should be remembered always is the second law of thermodynamics, which is the law of entropy. This is very, very important to understand, that the second law of thermodynamics is the law of entropy. Now, this law of entropy of science says that all systems in this universe, they move from order to disorder until and unless another energy is acted upon them. A very, very simple example, let me give you. You see a cup of tea or coffee. If you leave a cup of boiling coffee or tea on your table, so the law of entropy is it would move from order, which is it being hot, to becoming cold. This is entropy. Or an abandoned building. A building which is being used is entropy. The law of entropy is an order. And when that building becomes abandoned, slowly, 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 it destroys itself. We have seen so many examples of that. A car battery. The law of entropy is that it will move from order. Its order is it is charged. So it will move from being charged slowly, slowly, it will become useless because it has not been, another energy has not acted upon that. When the cup of coffee is becoming cold, it needs energy to act on it to make it hot again. So this is the law of thermodynamics. One other example, and then I will explain this point. It says that if there's a bomb blast, let's say there's a blast somewhere, the law of thermodynamics is that that blast will cause disorder. I mean, if there's a scientists spend hundreds of years to build a museum. Now, if there should be a blast in that museum, it means everything would tend from order to disorder. That is the law of the world. That is the law of physics. Now comes a very, very important question. That the greatest and the most powerful blast of this universe went against these rules of entropy but created order. How? The greatest blast of this universe was the Big Bang. The question is, and there is no scientist who can give you an answer to the question, that the law of entropy is, if there should be a blast anywhere, from order, you move to disorder. If your cup of tea is hot, the law of entropy is, if no energy is acted upon it, it becomes cold. This is the law of entropy. If your battery has been charged, the law of entropy is, it will move to disorder to become discharged. In the same way, if there's a blast anywhere, that blast, according to the second law of thermodynamics, is the blast would create disorder. So you move from order to disorder. This is a governing principle of the world, the second law of thermodynamics, also known as the law of entropy. Now, why is it that the greatest and the most powerful blast of this universe did not cause disorder, but caused order, which was the Big Bang? This is a phenomenon no scientist can explain, how disorder created order, which is the vice versa of order creating disorder. I would explain on how fine-tuned that blast was. A blast is never fine-tuned. If a bomb should go somewhere, it explodes everything. Let me give you a few examples of how precise that blast was. And then it requires, as the law of entropy says, it requires an energy to act upon it to create back the order. So where is that energy? That energy is missing. If the universe, after the Big Bang, you know, when the universe expanded, it burst into expansion. if it had increased or decreased by 1 part to the 10th to the power 55, 1 to the part of 100 onto the power of 55. These are so much figures that they use the word onto the power of 55. Let me give you an example of this. The scientists tell us today that for this universe, the observable universe, the one we can see, to be created, if we say the blast that took place was by chance, that chance should be as one person standing at one corner of this known universe, which is billions and billions of years, light years, throwing a dart, throwing a bullet at an atom, one atom that cannot be seen on the other side of the universe. That is the amount of luck needed to say that this world was created out of chance. You need to stand, that if the expansion rate of this Big Bang theory was late by 1 second, just 1 second, or slow by 1 second, or faster by 1 second, the chance for us to be where we are today is, as I said, letting one person stand at one side of the known universe, throwing a dart at an atom, a single atom on the other side of this universe. Even by a distance of 10 meters, you cannot point at an inch. I'm not talking about an atom. This is the amount of fine-tuning that was required. So again, the same question. The law of entropy is that a blast should create disorder, not order. But the greatest blast in the world created order. And the second law, the same rule mentions, until and unless energy acts on it for the second time. So if your cup of tea is cooling off, it requires energy to bring it back to that state of order. Then we have the matter and the antimatter. I'm still explaining the Big Bang. So you see, when there's a blast, the matter which is released, it has to be the same as the antimatter which is released. So the clash which causes that destruction. So you see, the matter has the proton, the neutrons, and the electrons, yes. So the antimatter is antiprotons, antineutrons, and positrons. So the opposite of matter. So when these two forces collide is when that destruction is caused. The scientists tell us today that for this universe to have come into being, this matter and antimatter had annihilated themselves, but for every 1 billion antimatters, there was one extra particle of matter. So for 1 billion antimatters, when that blast took place, the Big Bang, there was just one extra piece of matter that caused order instead of disorder after the laws of entropy. And the example they give of this, of how impossible this is, they say it is like flipping a coin. I'm quoting. Imagine flipping a coin 1 billion times and getting heads just one extra time, which is scientifically impossible. You require 28 years to flip a coin. It could be, if you flip it 10 times, it could be 6 times head, 4 times tail. But here's the case, you are flipping it 1 billion times, and for every 1 billion times you flip it, it should just be one extra than the other. Impossible. These are mathematically impossible equations. That is why they use such examples to explain this fact. Then we have the strength of gravity that was released when this Big Bang theory was happening. This Big Bang was happening. So they say if gravity was weaker by 1 part to 10 raised to the power 36, which is 36 zeros following 1. So 1 0, so 1% of 1,000,36 times. If the gravity had been weaker by just that amount, negligible, 1 to 36 million, this universe could not have been formed. And if it was faster by just that, the universe would have expanded before the laws of heat and others could have applied on it. Then we have the fine-tuning of the nuclear forces of the world. The strong nuclear forces, which are the proton and neutron that hold themselves in the atomic nuclei, if these forces were stronger by just 2% of hydrogen, 2% of hydrogen was stronger in that, this universe, the most essential element for the formation of the stars and the water, could not have existed. So these percentages, there are so many of them that we had gathered for this tafsir dars, but time is not on our side. The same for the distance between the earth and the sun. If the earth was just 2% closer, and 2% means hundreds of kilometers in the world we are talking about, this universe could not have, this earth could not have been able to hold life. In the same way, if it was 2% closer to the moon, we could not have held life in this world again. So here we are talking about these so many orders that were created out of a disorder which, according to the laws of science, was to create more disorder. The reason why I keep coming back to this law of entropy is because of how important it is in the world of science. That disorder can never give birth to order. And order slowly reduces till it becomes disorder. The scientists give the example of a building. If someone leaves a building for a while, it slowly goes to disorder. If you leave a cup of tea, it slowly goes to disorder. So whatever form of order it is, it goes to the opposite. If there's a bomb blast, order becomes disorder. And science cannot explain how a disorder, which is the Big Bang theory, gave birth to order. And with all these nitty-gritties of the role of the moon, if the moon was 1% closer to us, this world could not have come into existence. If the sun was 1% far from us, this world could not have come into existence. And that is why the Holy Quran says, وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ إِنْدَهُ بِمِقْدَارٍ. Everything He created, miqdar means it was perfectly measured out. And then the Holy Quran says, yes, this was a verse I recited in the beginning, مَا تَرَى فِي خَلْقِ الرَّحْمَنِ مِنْ تَفَاوُدٍ. Now science is telling us, if 1%, if 0.0001%, if all of those percentages that they tell us of, Allah mentioned this 1,400 years ago in the Holy Quran, that go in this universe and find any mistake in this universe, this world could not have existed. So the Holy Quran gives a challenge to mankind that go spread out in this universe and see, هَلْ تَرَى مِنْ فُطُورٍ. Is there any way this universe could have come into existence if there was any kind of defect, any kind of default in it? And earlier I gave you the example of a watch which one writer wrote about the watchmaker, and he gives the example of a simple watch. That if you see a watch somewhere, that should tell you that someone created that watch. So the law of entropy again is, it always increases who created these high orders. So if you go to a library, you require people to put the books into place. Each book needs an intelligent designer, intelligent mind to put the books into places. And then the law acts on it that slowly the books are, you see when you go to a library which has not been kept well, the books are not placed well, displaced. That is the law of science, of physics, that slowly you move to disorder. Now, the book of our life, the DNA, which we have explained, that 1 gram of DNA, a single gram of DNA requires 256 million gigabytes to hold the storage in it. And the physical example is I gave you this, the seed of a mango. You plant a mango, and that seed has in itself the manual of how I am going to grow. So when you plant the seed, it knows the nutrients it requires, it knows how deep it should go, it knows the season in which it should save water, it knows the season it would give fruit. So all that is stored in that seed that you planted, just when you threw off. And the scientists have mentioned that if one DNA was to be listed out, you start writing the information on one DNA, translating it into the current world, it would be more, the writing on that would be more than all the books of this universe combined that have ever been written. So who wrote that code of life? When you get a cut, the cells have the DNA which immediately know that, okay, we have to clot the blood first, then we will call in the white blood cells to fight off all germs, then there will be a creation of pus. That system is known to the human body because of that manual that has been placed in this world, in that body. And talking about seeds that we plant into the Holy Quran has mentioned that why do you not see that you plant a mango seed here, you plant next to it a maize seed, you plant next to the pawpaw seed, you plant. The Holy Quran has given this analogy a number of times where it says that how is it the case that you water them with the same water, you give them the same soil, but yet some of your fruits are sweet, others are not. Who is that governing force behind that fruit, behind that plant? That has caused that order to come from that seed. So the question that still remains is, science can never disapprove of a creation but an intelligent design. Let me give you an example of this. You see, when you take a water pump, you take the example of a water pump, just briefly going through this example. A child looks at a water pump that plumber comes to a new house and he fits. So there's a poly tank that is connected by a pump, and that water is being pumped into the houses. Now, the question is, as that child is watching, he's watching that pump bringing water. So when you turn on the tap, the water flows in. Now someone comes to that child and says, oh, this was by chance. Because of 10 years of this building being here, all of a sudden when you do this, water comes into this place. When you close it, when you on from this side, it is heated water. When you close from it, even a child would refuse to agree to what you're saying, even if you're a scientist. If a scientist should tell someone 1 + 1 is 3, you would not agree, whoever you are. No matter how educated someone is, God has given that person reason. Now, just like every child who witnessed a plumber come to their house fixing a pipe and saw water flowing from that pump, is a biological pump in every human being, which is the heart. The heart is just like the water pump, but more efficient. The heart is so efficient that when you sit down, it knows that it has to pump more blood into the upper limbs and the brain because the person is not into activity. When you lie down, it slows itself down to reserve energy. When someone is injured, the heart is programmed in a way to stop water flow to that area of the body. So if that water pump requires a plumber, an intelligent mind to fix your water taps for you, how can a person say that the biological pump, which is the heart, does not require someone to design it? And then it comes back. So then they say, why can we not see him? And we have answered that question already. Why you cannot see God? We have answered that question in great details there. Now, when a person is very happy, you see something, you become happy. How does your body know that you should be happy? That pump would send more blood into your brain, take oxytocin, take those hormones which are so that your body will know you're happy. How will your body know? So that brain would transfer those information of you being happy to your hands through the blood. So immediately you get happy, you get sad, you get afraid of something. The biological pump rushes water, blood to your brain. It gets the information and takes it to your hand. If a simple water pump, when it sees that the water is flowing, it starts rushing to put water in the other tank. If that requires intelligent design, how can this design of blood going to the body, to the brain, taking signals, distributing to the other, how can that be mere chance? That is what the Holy Quran says, that hal tara min futur, do you see any problem with the creation of God? Now, when you have fever and the body is heating up, the blood, which is again like a pump, it would react with the muscle, with your cells on your body, telling them to heat up. You see, when you have fever, fever is not an illness. Fever is just your body fighting illness. So that time your body has become a battleground. And it is the blood which increases its flow to that portion, gets information, takes white blood cells there. So it acts like an army. It is taking more of your white blood cells to go and fight there. So all these systems have been put into place by chance. No human mind. That is why in the beginning I told you something. I said the reason why some people, very intelligent people, refuse to accept God is because humility is not a gift that comes for free. To say that thing, I don't know, I am not aware about it, is very difficult. When these people have no answers to who created the mind, they say, oh, it's by chance. And the new the new intellect is that, oh, there is no God. That actually disproves you being intelligent. Because as simple as a watch, as simple as a water pump, that requires, in science, they have a concept called biomimicry. Biomimicry is when you don't have a solution to something, what should you do? So scientists would go and look out for animals. Like for example, there are some animals which are very stealth in their flying. So when they are flying, no bird would feel their presence and it will attack them immediately and take them. Now when the American forces want to make an aircraft which the radars cannot detect, they would go and look at that bird. Okay, so this bird is able to fly in high altitudes by allowing radiation to go over it, go below it because of its structure. And then they use that to make their aircrafts. In Tokyo, scientists were not able to come up with a solution of how to avoid when a train is coming out of a tunnel, the amount of air pressure and sound was causing it to derail. They went and found their solution with the woodpecker because of the speed with which it pecks on the wood and the amount of force it generates and how it safeguards itself. So this concept of biomimicry, it's a complete field of science that you tend to nature. The planes, another example. The tail of a plane was based on the tails of animals, of birds. So this is a complete science that the world is exploring now called biomimicry. It comes and points to the same fact that afillahi shakkun fatir samawati wal ard. How would you then reject that one creator? Hazrat Muslim Maud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu in his book, The Existence of God, has said the greatest sign for a God, you see, my existence to you is because you can see, you can hear my voice. If someone is watching us on radio, he knows I exist because he can hear my voice. So Allah's, Hazrat Muslim Maud radiyallahu says, the greatest sign for Allah's existence is His prophets. How? You take the Holy Quran, a book which was written, so-called written, by a person who was an illiterate, according to the definition of the world. He is able to write down the codes of life, the secrets of science, the secrets of social life, the secrets of physics, the secrets of chemistry. He has written down that the one who created the two oceans, that person has not seen the ocean in his life. And he is writing that a time would come when Allah would merge the two oceans. And the time comes, the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal. So Huzur says, the greatest sign for God is the prophets of God and the prophecies the prophets make. In this Masih Maud Day on MTA, a documentary was published on how prophecies of the promised Messiah alayhi salam are fulfilled. So the fulfillment of prophecies of the prophets is another great sign. See, we have not seen America. We have not been to America. But the stories we have heard of America tell us that there is America somewhere. We believe there's America because of witnesses. 100 people go to America, they oh, there's a place called America, there's this, there's this. We believe because of how rampant and how regular that news is. In the same way, as I told you in the beginning, we discussed that aspect as well, of how all ancient civilizations, all ancient known civilizations believe in the concept of God. I will just leave you with few food for thought. That today, aside Jamaat Ahmadiyya, there is no one among the Muslims, among the Christians who can stand up to speak to these atheists because they are so-called intellects of the world. There was a debate of a very prominent Muslim debater who was debating with an atheist. Now this atheist gets up and says, oh, so and so, you are so educated, you have done your PhD, you have done he mentions all his academic achievement and say, and you being so intellectual in your understanding, you believe Muhammad went to the skies on a winged horse? And the Muslim had no answer to that. Because they are misunderstood, they are misguided in their phenomena of the Holy Quran and the phenomena of science, which the Holy Quran explains. So for us to truly understand how beautiful the work of God is science and the word of God is the Holy Quran, we need to be Ahmadis. There is no way a non-Ahmadi can stand up. Look at the concept of jinn. Different speakers have spoken about the concept of jinn. The jinn is another very beautiful scientific concept of gems. And they have misunderstood it. And you go around looking at the Tafseer, people will sit on Ramadan 1 full hour and they're explaining jinn to be some weird, funny creatures. Meanwhile, jinn is another very beautiful scientific concept. The Miraj, the Isra of the Holy Prophet are scientific concepts. The Shaqul Qamar, the breaking of the moon, is a scientific concept. But as I said, aside Jamaat Ahmadiyya today, there is no one who can stand up to this atheist because they are the so-called intellects of the world today. And I did mention of that earlier on as well, that Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam has done a great work on proving the existence of God. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Thani rahimahullah radiyallahu anh has done great work in his tafsir. His tafsir is filled with so many of such examples. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi rahimahullah has done so much work. His book, Revelation and Rationality, Knowledge and Truth, should be read by every Ahmadi. And for those who do not find time to read entire books, Review of Religion does a good work by serializing such articles, by serializing such books, by serializing such topics. So Ahmadis should read and take pride in our heritage. As I said, we are the only ones who can stand up to Hindus today. We are the only ones who can stand up to the Christians today. We are the only ones who can stand up to fellow Muslims today. And we are the only ones who can stand up to atheism today. And first-hand information is from the Holy Quran. The Holy Prophet, I gave you the hadith of the Holy Prophet, where he says that in the later days, people will ask where God came from. The books of the Holy Prophet, the hadith of the Holy Prophet, Al-Masih Maud Islam, and the Khulafa. And in our current modern time, the Review of Religion is doing an excellent work. The God Summit comes regularly every year, so people should make time to watch the previous episodes. All the questions like, if there's God, why is there suffering? It's a question, a very genuine question, is answered on Review of Religion platforms. MTA is doing a great work on that. So we should make an effort to read and watch the great works that are being done in the Jamaat and that have been done by the Khulafa of the Jamaat and by the promised Messiah alayhi salam in the regard of atheism. And I would leave you with this word, that aside Ahmadis today, there is no one who fully understands the concept of miracles, the concept of angels, the concept of jinn, the concept of the different scientific phenomena that have been mentioned in the Holy Quran. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim innaka hamidun majid. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون